Well, there we are, finally. Bit of a late start tonight. I have a lot of people at the house. Well, my nephews are here. It's nice to have them. Don't get me wrong. They've been here about a week now, like 7 days. I think they're like 14 and 12. They're kind of hilarious. I like boys at that age. I guess you could say late night in the Talamancas is a euphemism for walkabout, but I get tired of reusing the same language all the time, so I switch it up a little bit. I have a few things on my mind, and I guess we'll get to them eventually. Because it's Christmas, and because I was raised a Christian and I come from a Christian culture, which, by the way, I think is the best culture on the planet. You know, I think, Richard Dawkins did a very curious thing about 6 months or a year ago. Now, if you don't know who Richard Dawkins is, I don't know how I can help you. I really don't. I mean, there's only so much I can do for you, right? Richard Dawkins is a famous atheist. I believe his academic title is evolutionary biologist. Very smart British guy. I think what I would say is that I think that the foremost atheists have come from British society, which is a curious thing in and of itself. And, you know, he sort of wade into this collapsing West situation in a BBC interview, and he made it clear he wasn't happy with the immigration patterns, and that despite the fact that he was an atheist, he was a cultural Christian because he had been raised in a Christian culture. And it's a very interesting distinction. And I don't know how I could talk about this. It has something to do with that fundamental imprint that's put upon us when we're growing up. I know from a spiritual perspective it's nonsense, it's an illusion, it's just, you know, wherever you're born, that's what you're going to be. This is why I don't get too down on people. This is why, you know, when I'm trying to deconstruct what's going on in the world, I don't go all hog wild on anybody. You know, because I just look at the situation and I say, if I had been born into that circumstance, I'd be no different. And it's sobering and humbling. And it's a constant reminder that the solutions to the problems we face are not based in any reaction. You can't hate people. You can't hate people. Does it appear as though there's an organized plan to collapse the world in concert with a prophetic plan, which is an oxymoron, but that's what it is. It's a plan, not a prophecy. Yes. Yes. Are the people who are doing it evil? I don't think so. I don't think so. And I'm reminded that you have to find other ways to solve problems other than reacting, blaming people, and charging at them. Which, by the way, is exactly how I was raised. In my Scottish Catholic upbringing, that's how you solve every problem. You charge at it, you punch it, you tackle it, you kick it in the head. It's evil. Kill it. And, but it doesn't work. You know, maybe this is the lesson of our time. Maybe we've gotten so good at warfare and violence that the lesson is simply you can't do this anymore because you've gotten so good at it that you can't do it. You know, when you go and you look at the history of warfare, and the warrior is one of the great archetypes in the human record. The warrior is a recorded figure. The warrior is an honored figure. The warrior is one of the four noble professions, according to Japanese philosophy. Or I can't remember if it's Japanese or Chinese. The four noble professions, it's I think agriculture, merchant, warrior, and I forget what the other one is, maybe teacher. And sort of the cornerstone of a society. And we've just gotten so good at warfare that there's no honor in it anymore. There's no honor in killing somebody by pushing a button and having a drone send a missile into a compound. I mean, there's no honor in it that I can see. So you shouldn't do it. When warfare was a genuine risk of your life against an enemy of equal or superior strength, and you won, you were perceived to be in the grace of God. There's actually a warrior's path in spirituality. It's recognized in the East. The warrior's path is a spiritual archetype. That's why I named, I subtitled The Light of Darkness, A Warrior's Tale for Our Time. And Robert is the quintessential warrior. And he correctly adduced that the real war is within ourselves, and became an extremely spiritual person, extremely disciplined in his... Buddy, you're not walking across the desk, okay? Fucking cats. I just gave him a look, or gave her a look, and she backed off this time. They're starting to understand me, these animals. Yeah, Robert is one of the most unique and engaging human beings I've met in my life. It was a pleasure and a blessing to meet him. It's a pleasure and a blessing to know him. And many of the samurai, when they got older and they gave up fighting, if they lived, because you got to go through a few battles to be a certified samurai, right? they would take up meditation and Zen and poetry and all the passive and aesthetic things in life. Isn't that interesting, right? When you get a life, it's kind of like pouring liquid into something. The liquid will take the shape of whatever it's poured into. That's how I see culture. This spiritual essence that makes a human being is put into a body. That body is put into a womb. That womb is part of a genetic bloodline. That child gestates over 9 months, is born, and has a life. And that life is determined by the family it's poured into, where the spirit is poured into. The mother and the father, the grandparents, and the family line are the shape of the life if the consciousness doesn't go beyond family and culture. And then after that, you've got the things going on around you, you know? Now, when you hear me talk tonight, you might come to the conclusion that I'm sounding a little bit like that little Jewish fellow who's the right-hand man of Klaus Schwab, Harari, Yuval Harari, the Israeli fellow, best-selling author. He's got nothing to say. That's another thing about the time we live in, is the people who are mediocre or even less than mediocre at something are succeeding financially. All standards are out the windows. But anyways, the point is that Harari is making a lot of the same points in his books, like Homo sapiens and things like this. You know, how do you get a human race that can think beyond or perceive beyond the limitation of family and culture? And is it completely unreasonable that governments and power structures, visible and invisible on the planet, have come to the conclusion that these are things that they have to destroy to build a better society? I don't think it's unreasonable. It lacks dignity. It's kind of that same sort of mentality that is the spiritual cancer of the West. The same mentality that gave us allopathic medicine, which the world has adopted. But allopathic medicine was derived by some very ghoulish activities. Desacralize the body, objectify the body, desecrate the body, dissect the body, and understand it. And this was begun, not everybody knows this, I've said it on the Talamancas review before, but Leonardo da Vinci gave us anatomy. And he used to go and dig up freshly buried bodies in Italian grave sites and take them home and cut them up and draw all the insides of the body. And in India and China and in shamanic culture, they never developed a medicine that desecrated the body. They saw the body as a whole thing. Very interesting. Now, some of you might think I'm being a little bit sentimental. You got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. I get all that. But in the West, we've made it a kind of war cry. And we use it to justify a lot of things, this macro thinking. You know, another classic example is Madeleine Albright when she was interviewed on 60 Minutes, you know, as her tenure as Secretary of State for the United States, I think it was under Bill Clinton, was coming to an end. And yeah, it was under Clinton. And she had applied these crippling sanctions. By the way, she's Jewish. And I mean, I'm not going to harp on this, but every time it comes up, I'm going to point it out because because it's part of a show don't tell attitude toward describing these things to you. Right? I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. And it's so often these people are Jewish. And I don't know if it's a depravity of the heart or just they're more accustomed to thinking in this macro way. You know, they're thinking 100 years out. This is the society we'll be living in. It'll be a utopia. If 500,000 Iraqi children have to die because we put medicine on the embargo against Saddam Hussein, that's the price we have to pay. But 99 out of 100 people could not do that. 999 out of 1,000 people could probably... No, who am I kidding? 999,999 people out of 1 million could not do that. I would say it's a special quality of people who are of this culture. You know? But I do agree with Harari, and I do agree with Madeleine Albright, and I do agree with people like Henry Kissinger that the problem is real. It's just, how do you solve it without becoming worse than the problem itself? So if the problem is a dictator and they're abusing their people, is the solution to go in and tear that country up and kill 500,000 children? We showed that dictator he was abusing his people. Really? Did Saddam Hussein in any 10-year period, and this is like the first Iraq incursion to the second, they were under embargo that whole time, under U.S. sanctions. Countless people died. Did Saddam Hussein ever kill 500,000 children in his culture in any decade? The answer is no. So who's more barbaric? Who's more dictatorial? And now we're at a point where the weaponry, as I, circling back to where I began with this impromptu thesis, now we're at a point where the weaponry is so outrageous that we're almost at the point now where you think somebody should die, they die. You don't have to suit anybody up, put on a chainmail armor, sharpen their sword, give them their shield, and send them out into a field to meet the best warrior of the other culture, which I suppose you could say had some honor to it. This seems to be hardwired into the human race. Otherwise, the ultimate fighting contest would not be, the UFC would not be a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Probably $1 billion enterprise now. It would not be that if it was not hardwired into us. We, as men, we sort of fight or demonstrate aggression to mate, to ward off other males. So it's sort of hardwired into us. But we can't do it anymore because it's going to destroy the world. So how do you change? Well, slowly and with great effort. Slowly and with great effort. I was an extremely violent kid. I wasn't walking around with a gun or anything, but I would fight at the drop of a hat. Loved to fight when I was 16, 17, 15. Loved it. I'd been boxing since I was about 11. Had a heavy bag and a speed bag in my basement. Trained every day. Push-ups, sit-ups, skipping rope. I did all of the training of a boxer. And I love to fight. And it's really sort of stupid looking back on it now. It's kind of genetic too. But there it is. I'm not quite sure how we become better people, how we stop doing this, but we're really in it now. What's that famous Albert Einstein line? Somebody asked him, what kind of weapons will the Third World War be fought with? He said, I'm not entirely sure, but the Fourth World War will be fought with sticks and stones. And this is, of course, after the atomic weapon was developed. It's really kind of amazing to me that there could be forces on the planet that seem to be pushing towards a nuclear conflict, as the unnamed shadow administration in the U.S. seems to be doing now. And I don't know if this is planned and Trump is in on it and it's all part of a psyop. And they're using the distraction between the incoming Trump administration and the outgoing Biden administration to do all this heinous stuff. And who's doing all this heinous stuff? It's not the guy eating ice cream and staring at 8-year-old girls, Joe Biden. It's not the Jamaican Indian woman who spent half her life on her knees. So who's doing it? Right? Perplexing question. But what kind of mind could contemplate that? Well, one that has prepared. And I mean literally prepared. I'm not talking about some Nietzschean psyching yourself up for this final confrontation with nuclear weapons. I mean, you're part of a culture that is prepared for this. You're prepared to go and live underground for 10 or 20 years. These underground cities are real. It's a whole topic. I could do 2-3 Talamanca reviews on it. Phil Schneider, very interesting guy, Phil Schneider. This is not turning out to be the Christmas show I thought I was going to do. Amazing how this works. It's like something takes over. Some spirit comes in and takes over the show as soon as I go live. Because I have all these ideas in my head before I hit the go live button. And they just don't come out. But I guess this is the way, as Cliff would say, universe wants it. So I'm not going to fight it. Phil Schneider is another interesting voice in terms of putting together the pieces of what's going on the world. He said that, and he said this in 1995, he said that it was an extraterrestrial plan to depopulate the world by 90%. And they wanted to achieve this by 2025 or 2030. Now, when you're listening to this on the precursor of YouTube in 1997 on a piece of shit computer, state of the art back then, but compared to what we have now, piece of shit, it's kind of hard to digest, right? It's almost like a science fiction movie. It's almost like The Day the Earth Stood Still. It's like a Star Trek episode. Extraterrestrials want to depopulate the world. you should be able to start putting together a lot of the pieces now with all the shows. I can't really speak maybe as much as I would like to directly, and you could say that might be cowardice, but it's better that I let you figure it out. Okay? That I just keep talking about it, and then wait for you to have the epiphany. But this human experiment has been extraterrestrial from day one. The angel and demon people are just retarded. I don't care who they are. Okay? They don't want to see it. They want to live in their cocoon. Whether it be Father Redhill on the Sean Ryan show or, and again, he's not evil. He's not deliberately disinforming people. He's speaking from the culture of seminary and becoming a Catholic priest. He's speaking from the experience of sitting in on exorcisms. Okay? But he backfills his story with the rhetoric and the dogma of Catholicism. How does anybody know that the angels fell? Ask yourself that. How do you know that angels fell? Well, I'll tell you how you know. Some Jew told you. The same people who thought it was justifiable to kill 500,000 Iraqi children to depose a dictator who probably incarcerated maybe 10 or 15,000 people a year who were probably pretty shady people in that society to begin with. Was he a great guy? No. I mean, before the U.S. took over the Abu Ghraib prison, that was his torture prison. But sometimes it's very difficult to judge things from an armchair in Dallas or Toronto or Los Angeles or Cleveland or Montreal. We Westerners, we forget that the world and the cultures in the world are different than ours. There's a lot of death in cartel culture in Latin America, and you may get the impression that these people like to kill people. Not really. It's because Latinos are this stupid. You're told 20 times, don't ever steal from the boss, don't ever steal from the boss. You get tempted, you steal from the boss, you get shot and buried in the desert. You shouldn't have stole. You entered into a subculture that has its own laws, its own rules. You were told those rules. You saw the consequences of breaking those rules applied to other people. You broke those rules because you got greedy. You get killed. When you live down here and you meet these people, it makes complete sense. It would be impossible to run $1 billion empire in Mexico without killing people, especially given that it's an illegal empire and it all has to be done on trust. It would be impossible. You think these Sinaloa guys are just monsters? No, they're not. They're just focused business people, the same as the people who run Pfizer, who've killed more people than the cartel probably. And they execute their business. I'm not trying to put them up on a pedestal. I'm just trying to give you a different version of reality. Man, this is a weird show tonight. I did not see this coming. Maybe I should wait till midnight more often to go on air. So, there's never any such thing as necessary evil. We never developed holistic medicine like Ayurveda or traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, because we just prefer to cut people open, because Da Vinci gave us anatomy and we just prefer to cut people open. I had to circle this back. You got to understand that a lot of the things we do as Westerners strike other parts of the world as just completely barbaric. Okay? I've given you the example of abortion before. Now, I'll give you my own personal view. I would not want to be part of an abortion. I would not want to be the male partner who got a female pregnant and aborted the pregnancy. Okay? But, as a matter of principle in a free society, I think a woman should be able to make up her own mind in the first trimester. You know you're pregnant after about 5 weeks when your period doesn't come. You go, you get a test, you know you're pregnant. There's really no excuse I can think of to leave an abortion until the end of the 3rd trimester. I don't get that at all. That seems completely satanic to me. But we're given free will, and if a woman wants to make a free will decision to abort in the 1st trimester, I say that's her decision. And they're not easy to live with. They affect women quite a bit, emotionally and spiritually. Okay? So that's my opinion. I keep my opinion to myself over here. Because to speak about abortion in Costa Rican culture, you may as well just wear a sign saying I'm a serial killer. They view it. That's how they view it. Like, how could you possibly... Maybe some of the sort of like urbane, sophisticated people with graduate degrees in San Jose and San Isidro, the big cities, they might fly to Panama to get an abortion because Costa Rica doesn't do it. But you talk to the simple people in the country. No, who would kill a baby? Who would do that? It's just the way they feel about it. So there's no abortion here. It's illegal. I think that's one of the reasons that this place, the more I look at what's going on in the world now, there does seem to be what I would call like karmic ley lines to it. The cultures that are being decimated now are the ones that I think are the vilest cultures. And those are our cultures. And they're vile. Okay? They are vile. You have to admit that. Canadian culture is absolutely vile now. American culture under Biden and Harris was vile. It would have been really vile under Hillary Clinton. Thank God she never got in power. Thank God. Do you ever think about this platform of progressivism? I'll teach you some simple techniques for breaking down bullshit. Always follow the language. That's how I figure a lot of things out. Now, to do that, you have to become proficient in language. Language is my thing. Okay? Don't feel bad. I get by on grade 9 math skills. An 18-year-old kid can cheat me at a cash register. I'm so bad with numbers. That last part's not true, but it's funny. I don't care to understand the world in some big conceptual way. I could give a rat's fuck about physics. I could give a rat's fuck about going into space on a ship. I don't need a ship to go into space. That's why we have consciousness. That's why we were given spiritual exercises. That's why we were taught to meditate. You want to go into space, you can do it without a spaceship. Part of you is already in space, whether you realize it or not. The hell was I talking about? Butterfly wings, but nothing really took me off track there. It's just so... Tonight's podcast is just so subtle, inspirational, improvisational, jazzy, So I think we've gone off the rails as a culture, and I think we're a bad example to the rest of the world. I really do. We've done some good stuff, and don't sit there in your armchair in your smugness wherever you are, Arizona, Phoenix, Houston, LA, and think you're better than the rest of the world because you have a bidet and you can wipe your ass with water and other people shit in outhouses, right? I think the simpler a life is, the better if it has spiritual discipline, focused spiritual discipline. That's what I think. I think that the West has been heavily influenced by a group of people coming off of the Kabbalah, which is probably the most toxic and dangerous thing ever given to the human race, and it was not created by human beings. It comes, what's that Led Zeppelin song? I forget what song it is. Soul of a woman was created below. The Kabbalah was created below. Okay? I'm not saying it comes out of hell, but it comes from very negative sources. And it was given to us to destroy us. There's nothing good about it. It's very tempting. It's like the Kabbalah might be the best analogy on the planet for the One Ring to rule them all in Lord of the Rings. It's very difficult to come into contact with it and study it even for a few years and not be ultimately decimated. It scarifies your heart. Okay, you know what scarification is? Scarifying is when you burn land to replant it. And you use the ash to remineralize. But you can't do that with a heart, not in a lifetime. Okay? So so that's what I'm getting at here, is all these people, when I look at people like Kissinger and Albright and others like them, I don't mean to just name Jews, I mean that you got the Masons too. All of the secret societies are basically coming off of the Kabbalah. This has become a cornerstone of the Talamanca Review. And I don't know, maybe I'm just simple, man. Maybe in my own way I'm just a well-spoken Forrest Gump, but I've never understood this shit. I've never understood the pursuit of power. I've never understood wanting to control things. Never understood it at all. That doesn't mean that I lack ambition. Man, I've gone at writing like, holy cow, like a prize fighter my whole life. Made huge sacrifices to be in front of a keyboard to write books and to perfect an art or a craft. I do believe in ambition and self-perfection through an external objective practice. For some people it's music. For some people it's gardening. You go to some people's houses, they've got this immaculate garden in the backyard that would put Buckingham Palace to shame. Beautiful. Or whatever the country palaces are of the royal family. I don't think Buckingham has all that many gardens. Maybe it does, I don't know. I don't give a rat's ass about the British royal family. I don't have anything against them, I never think about them. Nor do I understand people who are infatuated with them, but I like the UFC, so who am I to say they're any lesser than me? I have my own idiocies, right? We all do. This Christmas in 2024 is just, it's a bittersweet moment in the human history. I don't think this is a moment unlike any other. It dwarfs we almost seem to be right on the cusp of this time wave zero that Terence McKenna speaks about. It's just mind-boggling to me what's going on now. This is way beyond the Bay of Pigs, when the Soviet Union parked nuclear weapons in Cuba. This is like just way beyond that. We are just on a tightrope now. And knowing that these psychotic fucks have all these underground bases, Late night in the Talamancas. Soft rain. Lazy days for me. I got my work done for 2024. Just kind of hamming it up here. Watching a lot of TV, not doing anything constructive. I keep my meditation up, but haven't even really been doing my Qigong, my Kung Fu. I'm just a total veg. It's good to be a veg once in a while. Just let everything go and just, take it easy. Do what you want to do. Watch some movies. All that sort of stuff. If I have one thing to close what is going to be a shorter podcast tonight, it's this. No matter what happens, be grateful. Be grateful that you had an opportunity to live. Be grateful that you're alive. Gratitude is a love song to God. Gratitude for life is a loving expression to God. It's a high form of prayer. Don't find people who don't have gratitude ugly or anything. Just see them as crippled. They're the real handicapped people in life. Deep thinker. All right, that's it for tonight. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.